Rock Chalk Jayhawk. Kansas wins the national championship in San Antonio. Plus, Kent State names a new assistant coach, and the Sports Corner Pick'em Pan will break down the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs.
Plus, Gino Ford sits down with John Sable to discuss the state of Kent State men's basketball. Stay tuned. Sports Corner begins right now.
Welcome to episode number 7 of Sports Corner, Kent State's student-produced sports recap show. I'm your host, John Sable, alongside James Buckley. Coming up in the next half hour, James and I will recap the Kent State's weekend softball action and share our thoughts on the women's national championship.
That's right, John. Also, our pick'em panel will select, like we said earlier, who they think will be coming out of the Eastern and Western conferences in the Stanley Cup playoffs. But first, last night's big game, which pitted two of the best teams in college hoops. They faced off for the chance of the national title. Memphis seemed to have the game under control, but Kansas will be able to pull it out for an instant classic as they won the championship easily. Well, I wouldn't say easily.
No, not easily.
Opposite of easily, which would have been hard, I guess.
Yeah.
I kind of meant that. Anyway, first half.
Sasha Khan with the
First
big
half,
dunk.
close game. Second half, different story. Memphis starting to pull away. Boy, you can't say enough about Rose and what he did for that team.
Apparently the
so
bank
far
was
the
open
whole
on
year.
that shot.
Great, amazing, ridiculous shot. Kansas, though, starting their own little comeback. A three from the outside. Kansas trying to make a game. Now, Memphis would go 1 for 5 from the free throw at the end of the game, but here we go. Mario Chalmers, 4-3, and tying it up at 63, forcing it to
James,
overtime.
why didn't they foul him?
I don't know. That's what we're going to get into a little later on in the show. Joey Dorsey fouled out of the game, so he was not able to be in overtime. And, of course, Rush is going to take a chance in the lane with a huge dunk and ending up winning the game 75-68. Kansas. Not a lot of people had Kansas.
Yeah, I didn't have Kansas, as we all know. I picked Carolina. It didn't really work out that way.
But wow, great instant classic going to overtime. We're going to talk more about that last couple minutes of the game if we would have done anything different. But
and we'll get an update on our Facebook brackets.
Yes, that's going to be very interesting a little later on in Sports Corner.
Well, James, for the second time in the last week, the Kent State men's basketball team hired a coach. Former Golden Flash standout and 2006 graduate Armand Gates was hired today as an assistant coach. I had a chance today to talk to the new head coach, Gino Ford, about his new assistant.
I think he can really add several dimensions. I think, number one, he's from Chicago. He's really well respected, back there as a player, and just everyone knows what type of kid he is. So he'll have a lot of legs up in recruiting with some people because they'll trust him. Number two, he knows the league. He knows Kent State basketball. Number three, he was a great shooter. And if there was one thing on our team last year that was a weakness, it would have been perimeter shooting. There were a few things we didn't do, overly well, and perimeter three-point shooting would certainly have been one of them. So hopefully he can help in all those areas.
Well, James, I think it's a great pickup. Armand Gates, like Gino just said, knows the system here at Kent.
He knows the system. He knows a lot of the players because he was only here a couple years ago and went to the NCAA tournament.
Last year, in fact, actually. And not only that, but you said Gino talked about how Armand's a shooter. He can help out Kent State. That's the one downfall.
It'll be great to see this new kind of regime coming to Kent State.
Very true. All right, now, James, to the diamond. Kylie Reynolds and the rest of the Kent State softball team recorded its third straight MAC conference win with a 1-0 win over OU on Sunday. Now, Reynolds, like we know, great pitcher, struck out 9 en route to her 4th shutout of the season, giving the Golden Flashes its 7th consecutive win. The Flashes' Kim Hamilton scored the lone run of the game after Bobcat shortstop Amanda Sachs dropped a pop-up. The ladies now have the rest of the week off to get ready for next weekend's doubleheader against Western Michigan. Now we're going to go to Randy Zimnick for our Athlete of the Week. Randy.
John, what's happening? Alrighty now, congratulations to former Golden Flash Armand Gates for being named to Gino Ford's coaching staff. You are this week's KSU Athlete of the Week, or at least former Athlete of the Week. It's all good, folks. Armand served on the Western Kentucky University coaching staff last year. Good to see Armand's Army come back. Real good guy. Coming up in Sports Corner, you and John and James debate on the strength of the 2008 NBA Hall of Fame class, and our Sports Corner Pick'em panel debates on who has the upper hand in the Stanley Cup playoffs. But first, Coach Gino Ford sits down with John Sable, and you'll find out what makes this coach tick. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Sports Corner. Well, you may have noticed we're all sporting yellow ribbons today in support of a U.S. soldier very close to our director, Lauren George.
That's right, John. 5 months ago today, Sergeant Mark Lally, Black Hawk helicopter crew chief, was injured when his helicopter went down over Italy. 5 of his fellow soldiers were killed in the crash, but Lally survived. He was not expected to survive the crash, but today he's expected to make a full recovery from the injuries and took his first few steps a few days ago since the accident. Our hearts go out to Mark and his family, as well as his close friend and Sports Corner director, Lauren George.
So it's a very noble cause for Lauren to talk about this. And, like James, we were talking about before the show, this show is dedicated not only towards Mark, but to the entire soldiers overseas.
Yeah, serving in Iraq, Afghanistan, all over the world.
Yes.
So always keeping them in our thoughts.
Always. James, we talked about earlier in the show here about how I talked with Gino Ford about, becoming the new head coach, talking about what he would change, what he would keep. And this is what he had to say earlier today. But Gino, first off, congratulations on the head coaching position. What does this honor mean to you?
Well, I think it's like every time you're in a situation where you get a promotion or you take on a new challenge. First off, you meet it on several fronts. Being familiar with the kids we have back and knowing where their games lie and things that they need to do to get better, I think gives me a leg up on, off-season stuff. You just try to keep things moving, in a positive direction with the program. And it's a challenge. There was certainly a lot, there's a lot expected of our program, and we lost 2 all-conference post players. 2 of the top 7 or 8 players in our league are gone. Those are heavy hits, and typically in our league, you take a step back when those things happen, and the challenge for us is to not do that and to stay right where we're at.
What are you going to change, keep, or any new policies here at Kent State?
Well, if anyone's going to be measured against Jim, he's the all-time winningest coach in the history of the conference. So I guess that means everyone who's ever coached would be a failure if that's the watermark. So, certainly, we want to be successful. I'm not going to get caught up in comparing myself to Jim because there's hundreds of guys that have failed to live up to that. And, I've just got to be me and keep our kids moving in a good direction.
What was the biggest advice when he heard that you were hired?
Well, he basically almost felt like he was jinxing me because he acted like I was getting from the second this thing was official because he and I had conversations about me possibly going to Texas with him, and that would have been a great opportunity. Certainly this was something that I wanted more.
I know you kind of touched on earlier about replacing Mike Scott and Q, but how difficult is that going to be to replace those 2 guys?
Good kids, great players, and probably most importantly, great teammates. Very unselfish. Let's take Mike Scott first. He scores 1,000 points. He might be the best team defender that's played in the MAC, and at least certainly in the last 5-6 years that I've been at Kent State. He's the best one we've had. And then on the other hand, you lose Q, who was only here for 2 years, but I can't even give you the litany of stats that he had with that. He's the only player in NCAA history with a variety of stats. And the intangible thing that they brought is going to be, borders on impossible. We've got to find 2 great players that are great kids that are going to do it the right way, and that's not easy to find.
Gino, you're an Ohio guy. You're from Cambridge, Ohio, where you played your high school basketball. You're voted Mr. Basketball in 1993. You've had 10 years of head coaching experience, or I should say just coaching experience at Muskingum and Shawnee State and at OU and here. How does it feel to contribute to the rich tradition of basketball here in Ohio?
Well, I've certainly been fortunate to be a part of it. My dad was a high school coach for 31 years, so, I can remember being 6 years old and getting out of kindergarten, and I went right across the street. The elementary school and the high school were across the street. And I walked to the crossing guard right across the street and right in the back door to the gym, and that's how I spent my childhood. I talk about a childhood misspent, but anyway, I think that I've just always been around it. I've never not been in there. I think I've got good appreciation for not only the rich tradition of Ohio basketball, but also try to stay in touch with people.
You guys have brought back a former Kent State basketball player as an assistant, Armand Gates. Talk a little bit about that, how that's going to help this basketball team and what he can bring.
Armand is just he's a winner. He's a great kid. He's been here for 5 seasons in the program. This past year he's at Western Kentucky. They made the Sweet 16. He's been around winning a bunch. I don't think you get people that are around success that they don't figure out why it's successful. And he's a bright guy, finished here, got his master's, graduated on time, and then went on, did his master's his 5th year. And there are a lot of students that it takes 5 years to get an undergraduate degree. So this is a kid who not only balanced the rigors of basketball and travel, but was able to get it done in the classroom. I think he can really add several dimensions. I think number one, he's from Chicago. He's really well respected, back there as a player, and just everyone knows what type of kid he is. So he'll have a lot of legs up in recruiting with some people because they'll trust him. Number two, he knows the league. He knows Kent State basketball. Number three, was a great shooter. And if there was one thing on our team last year that was a weakness, it would have been perimeter shooting. There were a few things we didn't do, overly well, and perimeter three-point shooting would certainly have been one of them. So hopefully he can help in all those areas.
What can KSU fans, alumni, and students expect from you as the head coach this year?
Well, we're going to continue to play hard. That's all I'm going to promise. I mean, I'm not going to get into promising 28 wins or 20 wins or whatever it may be. I think what we have to be able to do is maximize our abilities. But we're going to play hard and be after, trying to represent the school in a first-class way.
So, John, you talked to him. What was the thing that impressed you most about Gino Ford coming up here for the Flashes?
Well, I think whenever you have a new coach coming into a system, a lot of people feel that everything is going to change. I don't really think that so much with Gino. I think he's going to stick to the game plan that Jim Christian has taught him, that has shown him and everything. And one thing I really got also from him is, like, he loves these players on this team.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, they're going to get a few recruits in here and everything like that, but I think next year will be a surprising year for Kent State basketball.
All right, John. Well, still to come after the break, John and I will pick our Stanley Cup playoff favorites and debate the Basketball Hall of Fame class of 2008 and excuse you. Also, Randy will rejoin us with the pick and panel to decide the women's national championship. All that and more when Sports Corner returns.